Hey everybody, Adam here with Hometown Acres. Welcome back. In our last video, we started working on our dream workshop workbench. And in that video, we did a little narration style similar to this, and a lot of people seem to like it, so we're gonna do it again. So here we rolled out the workbench and we put these 2.5-inch bolts in the bottom for the casters. And a lot of people said you need to get shorter bolts or flip them and turn them around. Well, if you turn them around, they're actually going to be in the way of the caster swiveling. So here you can see I'm just taking an angle grinder and cutting them off. Then we go ahead and roll the workbench out and get it ready to start adding doors and drawers. So for the cabinet doors, we're going to be using the leftover oak from the permanent workbench that you see mounted to the wall behind me. It is 1 by 5 inch material, and we're going to be cutting it down to 1 by 2.5 to create our rails and stiles. So here you can see I'm just ripping all that material down to 2.5 inches in the table saw. And then we're going to recess a little pocket inside the frame, kind of like a picture frame for the 1/4 inch plywood paneling to sit inside of. Now, I'm not a professional cabinet maker, so this is going to be kind of the rough and crude way to make cabinet doors, but they'll still look nice. And as you can see here, the leftover oak from the tabletop of the bench was just barely enough to make this work. If I would have had 1 inch less of material, I would have had to pick something else. So now I'm just laying everything out, making sure that everything's going to fit how I think it's going to, and that it's going to be square. And then we'll go ahead and start cutting in that pocket for the recessed plywood. So I mentioned already that our paneling is going to be made out of 1/4 inch plywood, and you can see right here I've got the top of the saw blade on the table saw set to 1/4 inch deep. That's going to set our depth for the paneling that it will sit inside, and then we'll go ahead and flip this 1 by 2.5 around. And here you can see the pocket that's going to create in our rails and stiles, similar to what I said, like a picture frame. Now I know people are going to tell me that I need to get a cabinet style table saw that's a little bit more professional grade, but I actually really like this little job site table saw because as you can see, I can fold it up, roll it away, tuck it against the wall, and it's out of the way when I'm not using a table saw, whereas a cabinet style table saw just takes up so much more room in the shop. And yes, the performance is better, and yes, you can add a dado stack to it and probably do this job here in half the time, but I just prefer having the flexibility of tucking this thing away and putting it up against the wall when I'm not using it. It would be nice, however, for ripping down larger sheets of plywood like I'm doing here, because as you can see coming up, because I don't have as much work surface to work with, I do end up making a little bit of a boo-boo here, backtracking, which I do not recommend, highly dangerous to go backwards with a table saw. But that little bit of error that we made in the table saw, that will be covered up by that recessed pocket that we made in the rails and stiles, so we'll be able to hide that. And then we're creating the final cut on this 1/4 inch plywood to create the length of our panels. So as I said before, I'm not a professional cabinet maker. This actually happens to be the very first time that I have ever made cabinets, cabinet doors, and drawer slides. I'm sure any professional woodworkers or cabinet makers out there are screaming at their TV right now for how I'm assembling these cabinet doors, but it's a shop. I'm not building a piano. It's going to be good enough for what I'm doing, and I think it's still going to look pretty good. So before I glue these into place, I'm just checking one more time that everything's going to fit like I think it's going to, making sure that the rails and stiles are all in square, that the panel's going to fit inside. Then I'll pull them back out and start throwing some glue down. And in case anybody's wondering, it's about 30 degrees outside, snowing, and I've got it up to about 76 degrees here in the shop. Now I have to go ahead and recess a pocket into the side of the door for the hinges. If you're wondering and you want to do this project yourself, you're going to need an 1 3/8" Forstner bit to create that pocket for those hinges. You really need to be careful here that you get your hole deep enough that the hinge will recess all the way down and sit flush, but that you don't drill through the face of your cabinet door. Craig makes a jig that allows you to preset the depth so you don't under drill or over drill the hole, but it was like $40 and I was pretty sure I could freehand this by myself without screwing it up. Here's a little trick I picked up from watching some cabinet building videos on YouTube. Use a level or any kind of straight edge to make sure that your hinges are lined up and all in a straight line. Now I did buy the cabinet door hanging jig from Craig, just because when you're hanging cabinet doors, you really need like a third hand, one to hold the door in place, one to drill the holes, and one to line everything up. And the jig from Craig does help to hold the cabinet door in place while you line it up and drill the holes. So now we've got 2 doors done, and this will give you a rough idea what this cabinet is starting to look like. Now, when it comes to installing cabinet pulls, I've screwed up enough cabinet doors in my lifetime to know that it is much easier to create a jig and pre-drill those holes and make sure everything is going to fit before you start drilling holes into your cabinet doors. So that's what we're doing here is I will actually pre-drill this, pre-fit it, make sure everything is lined up exactly. Because what will happen is if you don't have them lined up just perfect in your cabinet door, you'll end up having to go back and oval that hole out to get your screw to line up with the cabinet pull. So once I know that this is going to fit right, I can then go ahead and transfer it right to the cabinet door face, and I already have a hole ready to go that will line up with the holes that need to be for the cabinet pull. And also it's going to help the drill hole be a little bit cleaner because it's going to hold those fibers together as I'm drilling through them, so I'll have less tear out. And since I cut my jig to be exactly 4 inches down from the top, all of my cabinet pulls will be lined up the same as well. So just a really good way to create some uniformity and repeatable holes for your cabinet door pulls. So now that our cabinet doors and pulls are installed, it's time to go ahead and start working on our slide out trays. So what I need to do first is I need to mount the slides to the inside of the cabinet box. And in order to do that and make sure that the slides are not going to hit the doors or the hinges on the way out, we've actually got to build out the mounting block for the drawer slide. So that's what I'm doing here is creating just a 1 inch or a 3/4 inch spacer that will keep the drawer slides from hitting the inside of the face of the cabinet as they're sliding out. And it's also going to give a little bit more meat for the screws holding the drawer slides up to bite into. So instead of just the 3/4 inch plywood on the side of the cabinet box, now we've got 1.5 inches because we're doubling up the plywood. Now that our drawer slides are installed, it's time to go ahead and start assembling the cabinet tray that we're going to be attaching to the drawer slides. So again, with the job site table saw, a lot of these panels are too big for a saw of that size. So the track saw has been an invaluable tool. I'm so happy I bought it. Now that we have our tray made, it's time to go ahead and add the drawer member of the slide to the box. Important thing to note here, when you're building your tray or your drawer, you have to be really, really exact with the width. If you're off by even as little as 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, you'll have to shim the drawer member of the cabinet slide out, or possibly if you make your drawer too wide, you'll have to cut into the side of your cabinet box to make room for it, because the tolerance here is a very narrow margin. So I actually did have to shim a couple drawers to make them fit. Luckily, on the ones that I did, I had made the box about 1/8 of an inch too narrow, so it was easy just to add some shim pieces underneath the drawer slide and build it out a little bit. But yeah, it would be a bigger pain in the butt if you ended up making the drawer just a little bit too wide. Another thing worth mentioning that cost me about an hour of my time is the first time you go to slide the drawers in, you'll get about 3/4 of the way, and then there'll be some resistance that you have to really push against. Once you're able to slide it all the way in, then it slides in and out very nicely. But yeah, the first time I couldn't figure out if something was binding, if my cabinet wasn't square, if my drawer wasn't square. So it took me a little bit of figuring out that you just kind of shove it in there the first time, and then once it's all the way in, then it pulls in and out nice and easy. So now that the mobile workbench is done, it's time to finish up the trim on the permanent workbench. So that's what we're doing here, is just tacking up some red oak that we've mitered the corners to finish making this look nice and clean and crisp. One last thing I want to do to the mobile workbench, just to really take it to the next level, is to add some outlets. Now, even though these are flush mount outlets, I'm not able to actually flush mount them because the cord comes out the back of the outlet, which would interfere with the box. When I looked at the pictures of these on Amazon, I thought that the cord came out the side, which would have been helpful. So in order to make sure that that cord coming out the back wasn't running into the box, I had to shim them out, and I decided to use red oak there just to keep it matching the trim and make it look nice. And we're adding a second set of outlets on the other side as well. Each box has 6 outlets in it, plus 4 USB and 4 USB-C. So I should be able to charge just about anything with these outlets on this table. So we've got both outlet boxes coming into the main surge protector in the back, which allows us to just have one single cord coming out the back to power the entire workbench. And then you can see here that also allows me to have internal power for things like the air compressor, or possibly even a battery charging station for power tools. And once again, here's what they look like up close. And here's that clearance issue I was talking about with the cord coming out the back. That's why I had to shim it out, so I had just a little bit of room so the drawer wasn't rubbing on that wire coming out. And then we've got one more surprise for the back wall here, and this is kind of viewer recommended. You'll see what I mean here in a second. All right, so now the workbench is pretty much all done. Obviously, I still need to add some kind of clear coat or protectant on the wood, because inevitably I'm going to be coming in here with greasy hands
and pulling drawers out. And the last thing I want to do after I spend all this time on it is to get greasy fingerprints all over this and really get it looking dirty again. So adding some kind of clear coat or polyurethane or something on there is going to make it easy to clean up and protect the wood itself. As far as this back wall, in the last video we asked for advice on what we should do with this big open space here. I said that because this workbench is 40 inches deep, hanging upper cabinets here wouldn't make a lot of sense because I probably wouldn't be able to reach them. So a lot of people said, looks like a good spot for a flat screen TV, and I did you one better. I added a projector screen, and so that still gives me the ability, if I want to add something like maybe a French cleat system to hang tools, I mean, I can still reach back here, but I gotta stand on my tippy toes, maybe get a step stool or something. And the projector screen is nice because I can block it up out of the way. And you know, now it's not just a woodworking shop, but it's a full-on man cave. So we can have football watch parties out here. Everything looks clean and is nice. It's not an ugly place to host a football watch party. As far as the cabinet itself, you guys saw we added some drawer slides on here. So we've got these giant trays for tons of storage. Now the drawer slides, Home Depot does not carry drawer slides big enough for a cabinet of this size. So these are 30-inch drawer slides. I think the biggest that Home Depot sells is 22, 24-inch for your standard kitchen cabinet drawer slides. These are heavy-duty, full extension, ball-bearing drawer slides. It just helps to take advantage of all of the space of this cabinet. So I'm really happy with those. I got those on Amazon, if I didn't say that already. I'll leave a link in the description below if anybody's planning on doing something like this, or if you need bigger drawer slides than what Home Depot offers. Obviously, the biggest benefit to this whole setup is the fact that this whole cabinet can slide out. Now I still need to come up with something for like some kind of handle, but again, this is the first time I've ever built cabinets, so I didn't really think it all the way through. I didn't leave myself enough faceplate here to give myself a good handle. I think I could probably still find something, but right now my workaround is just to open these doors and grab it from the bottom and pull it out that way. Right now we did add outlets to the back. You guys saw that. We've got 2 outlets on either side running to a surge protector in the back. So whenever I wheel this out, I just need to unplug it from the wall back here, and then I can move it around anywhere in the shop here. And I've got a pull down extension cord from the ceiling that's got a 50-foot reach. So anywhere in the shop, I can plug this in and have power to 12 outlets. I do need to keep in mind not putting too much load on this because I've got an extension cord running to a surge protector, running to 2 outlets. So it's a lot of connections there. So I just need to be mindful not to overload it. I will leave a link to these flush mount surge protectors as well that I got on Amazon if anybody's interested in doing something like that. So yeah, that is our new workbench. I am pretty proud of myself and the way this turned out for never having built cabinets before. And it just kind of reminds me of a quote that I heard on Neil Koch's channel, Dig Drive DIY on YouTube, probably a year ago or something. He was working through some project, hit some snags, and he said, you know, everything is figure outable. And that has kind of just stuck with me. People build cabinets all day, every day, all across the world. And if they can do it, why can't I? There's got to be a way. I can figure it out. And that's kind of what we did here. Is I've never done this before, but we ended up putting together a cabinet that I think looks pretty good, serves its purpose. Would I want to throw it in a kitchen? Probably not. But for out here in the woodworking shop, I think it fits in absolutely perfect. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed this one, give me a big thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.